All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here from the studios of the X Zone Broadcast Network in St. Catharines on the X Zone Radio TV Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and of course our good friends here in St. Catharines on Classic 1220 CFAJ AM, who also stream us on classic1220.ca. Tonight on the X Zone, a 2-hour special from the X Zone Broadcast Network lecture series. We're presenting Len Kasten, who is a UFO researcher who presents his lecture, The Secret Journey to a Planet Called Serpo. Now, on July 16, 1965, according to Len, a massive alien spaceship from Zeta Reticuli star system landed at the Nevada test site north of Las Vegas, Nevada. Following a plan that was set in motion by President Kennedy in 1962, the alien visitors known as the Ebens welcomed 12 astronaut-trained military personnel aboard their craft for the 10-month journey to their home planet Serpo, 39 light-years away. According to Len, in November 2005, former and current members of the Defense Intelligence Agency, directed by President Kennedy to organize the Serpo exchange program, came forward to reveal the operation, including details from the 3,000-page debriefing of the 7 members of the Serpo team who returned after 13 years on the planet. Has never been authenticated, nor has it been ever spoken about by anyone but Len Kasten. So, is this fact or is this fiction? You be the judge. I will be back just before the end of this hour to set things up for the next hour. So, without further ado, here is Len Kasten with his The Secret Journey to the Planet Serpo, a true story of interplanetary travel. I'm Rob McConnell. Stand by and please listen.
It's my pleasure this morning to talk about a kind of esoteric subject that not too many people really know about. It's sort of been kept in the shadows, and yet it's very important because it opens up so many other doors about the whole experience, and it really opens a Pandora's box, actually, because if this story is true, as we all think it is, and I'm sure it is, and that we have sent 12 Americans to a remote planet as early as 1965, then all the other secrets start to tumble away. And that is indeed the case. If we had diplomatic relations with a distant civilization, 39 light years away, who supplied us with technology and information about the galaxy, just think of what that means. It's a doorway to the entire galaxy. In any case, let's start out. Is everybody ready? Okay. This all started in November of 2005. there's a UFO list, there's a UFO network called the UFO Thread List, consisting of about 150 people. Most of them are ex-insiders in one way or another, either intelligence or military, and they like to talk to each other on this UFO network. At the time that this began, the list at that time contained about 150 people, including many extremely well-known names in UFO research and or related or leading-edge scientific fields. Those on the list have differing views regarding the truth about this statement. However, they all eventually came to understand that it really happened. It started with 11 emails sent to the list talking about the fact that we had sent a team of Americans to a planet called Serpo, 39 light years away, on an exchange program. And in return, this civilization sent one of their members here. Our team stayed there for 13 years. And when these emails started to tumble into the list, it woke everybody up, and people started responding. And 2 or 3 of them who were in the know said, how does he know this, and why is he revealing this? And eventually they all got on board with it, and they asked one of the people on the list, Bill Ryan, to create a website dedicated to this information. So Bill did that, but let me talk a little bit about Anonymous. He was an ex-DIA executive or official who had worked for the DIA all of his life and was now heading up a team of 6 DIA people, 3 retired and 3 still active, who wanted this information known. Why now? Why 2005? Well, here's the reason. This trip took place in 1965. It all ended in 1980. Thank you. They came back in 1978, and the final report was written in 1980. The debriefing took place in 1979. It was a full year. And then the final report was written in 1980. So the information was released in 2005 because it was exactly 25 years after the final report was written. And that's what is necessary for all classified information. They must keep it secret for 25 years. After that, it can be released. So Anonymous now had a clear path to releasing it, and he did right on schedule. In 2005, November 2005 was the beginning of this whole thing. I met Bill Ryan in early 2006, and I got the whole story then, which was about 2 months after Anonymous had released it. Anonymous was an interesting guy. He would never give his full name. However, he was evidently very high up in the intelligence community. We know that because he was the editor of the Red Book. The Red Book is an extremely thick, very detailed account, summary, written and compiled by the government on UFO investigations, dating from 1947 to the present. It's updated every 5 years. What actually occurs is that as UFO reports come in and are denied and are deemed credible by the reporting government agency, whether it's military or civilian, they are routed to a special section of the government for a follow-up analysis. After that vetting process, they are then sent to a special group which then places them for final review for possible inclusion in the Red Book. And he says, Anonymous says he knows all this because he says, I have served as the editor for several editions of the Red Book and have written and delivered the executive summary for several sitting U.S. presidents. So you know he had to be very high up to be able to do that. So I know of what I speak, and when I say editor, it is not in the sense of the word you are familiar with. I do not correct or review any of the hundreds, if not thousands, of reports which are distilled into the final 5-year report for grammar and punctuation. I only present and include the most important, compelling cases in the Red Book, which includes an analysis by me and others of any trends, types of sightings, human contacts with the ETs, and any national security concerns our government or planet may have. My part is to write the executive summary and present it to the current sitting President of the United States. If there was a national security matter that presented itself, that 5-year published review of the Red Book would be interrupted, but that has never been necessary because we have a good relationship with our visitors. And when he says visitors, he's talking about ETs. And then he goes on to say, we did have visitors from 9 other star systems, besides the ones we're dealing with today. The Greys, of course, they came from a planet near Alpha Centauri. They were not from Zeta Reticuli. The third class came from a G2 star system in Leo. Another class of visitors came from a G2 star system in Epsilon Eridani. The visitors were classified by a code. The code which was classified in itself was ETE1, ETE2, ETE3. The Greys were ETE3, and so on. The Red Book lists 9 different visitors. We determined recently that some of the visitors were of the same type of race, but a mechanical life form. They were hybrid beings that were created in a laboratory rather than by natural birth. These creatures were more like robots, although they were intelligent and could make decisions. Is this working? Yeah, I guess it is. They might be the hostile visitors, as some people believe. So that's anonymous, and he's maintained that posture of never revealing his name. But my own feeling is that if he's giving these reports to the president, he must be on MJ-12, and I believe he was on MJ-12. In any case, at this point in his life, he's probably around 80, and he probably had a lot to do with this program while he was a young man working for the DIA. That's my guess. And he might have been the one, my belief is he might have been the one at that time that gave the story to Spielberg, because Spielberg took it and ran with it and made the movie Close Encounters. So I think Anonymous was the one that gave him that story. I think Spielberg had some sort of deep throat giving him this information when he made Close Encounters. And it was probably him. And here's Bill. Bill was trained in mathematics and physics and psychology in Bristol University. He was a teacher. For the last 30 years, he's been a management consultant specializing in personal and team development, leadership training, and executive coaching. So Bill had the experience with the internet to be able to create the website, and that's why he was chosen. So he did a good job. The website, by the way, is still out there for anybody who's interested. It's been out there for about, about 14 years now. It was put out there in 2006. I'm sorry, so 9 years. It's still out there. It's serpo.org for those who are interested. If you want to go look at it, please do, but keep in mind there are about 15,000 words, and it's not organized very well. So you're going to have to dig through it, get all the information, but it's there. And you can back up what I'm telling you by going out there and looking at it. So Anonymous was faced with a question, with a decision as how to release the information. He decided to release it to the UFO list, which was moderated by a guy named Victor Martinez. Victor is an ex-teacher, former U.S. government employee. All we have for Victor is this, unfortunately. He wouldn't give us an up-to-date photo. Victor is a former government employee. He worked for a number of different federal law enforcement agencies. He has a long-standing personal interest in the subject of UFOs. He had been contacted by Anonymous. Anonymous contacted him, and Victor was the one responsible for bringing Bill Ryan into the picture and asking him to do the website. Anonymous had several options at his disposal. He could have released it to CBS, NBC, and Victor says this: CNN, CBS, NBC, ABC, 60 Minutes, Dateline, 2020, others would have demanded that the story be verified by the White House itself, meaning either Bush or Cheney at that time, or one of their subordinates with their implicit knowledge and permission, would have signed off on such a disclosure before being made public. Now, does anyone really believe that the single most secretive presidential administration in the past 50 years, I should say secretive, not secretive, or so would sign off on verifying such a highly classified report? Does anyone in their right mind imagine that the White House spokesman is saying to one of these major news media outlets, "Oh yeah, wow, so you found out, someone leaked it to you guys. Okay, cat's out of the bag, go ahead, tell everybody." That's never going to happen. So that's why he released it only to his inner group. The Defense Intelligence Agency, many of you may not know what that is. In 1960, when Kennedy became president, he relied heavily on the CIA, and that was a big mistake for him. They were not very cooperative. And I think all of you probably know about the problems he had with the CIA in terms of the Bay of Pigs. So he and McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense at that time, decided to create a whole new intelligence agency, and they created the DIA. The DIA is a Department of Defense combat support agency. The purpose of the DIA was to bring all the intelligence agencies of the militaries together into one overall intelligence agency. And it had to be militarily related, defense related, whereas the CIA is not really defense related. CIA is civilian, it's a civilian agency. By bringing the Army intelligence, the Navy intelligence, the Air Force intelligence together, they would get a better view, but really what it was all about was he was having his problems with the CIA. So they created a whole new intelligence agency in 1960. And when this story came up, well, let me give you a little bit of information about the DIA. They say our mission is to satisfy the military and military-related intelligence requirements of the Secretary of Defense. We plan, manage, and execute intelligence operations during peacetime, crisis, and war. We serve as the DoD lead for coordinating intelligence support to meet battlefield conditions. Our employees travel the world and meet and work closely with other professionals. Let me show you their current headquarters in Washington. We offer our employees personal development through many education, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we won't talk about that. In any case, when Kennedy became president in 1960 and was informed about this exchange program, he decided to give the whole thing to the DIA because the Bay of Pigs had caused a tremendous rift between Kennedy and, I'm just going to go back to, between Kennedy and the CIA. They blamed the failure of the Bay of Pigs on Kennedy. He blamed it on them. They said they didn't get air support. He told them he would not give them air support. They claimed that these guys got killed because they didn't get air support. So a lot of people think that's why he was assassinated. That's a very complicated story in itself. I don't want to get into that right now. But in any case, let me go back here. Kennedy decided to give the whole thing to the DIA, and that was very fortunate. And that's the reason we're here today, because if he had given it to the CIA, we never would have gotten the story today. But the DIA was dedicated to transparency. Kennedy was dedicated to transparency. Kennedy did not believe in secrecy, so the DIA got the story, got the program. And that's how it became to be released 25 years later. Let me go back here 1 minute. When this story was released in November of 2005 to the UFO thread list, 150 people, UFO magazine got right on it, and did a cover story on it right away. So this was from early 2006. Many of you may know about Bill Burns, the editor of UFO magazine. He saw it immediately as a very important story. And he put a story in that issue, that early issue of 2000 of UFO magazine. And in that story, how many of you have heard of Richard Doty? He's curious. Richard Doty was a member of the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigation. And Doty wrote an article on Serpo for that issue of magazine. And here's some of the things he says in that article. We can hypothesize that Anonymous may not even have had access to the 3,000-page document at all. Anonymous hardly has this report in his living room, just sitting there like a Sears catalog. So such a report would be guarded under the tightest security and the conditions of access highly restricted. It's worth remembering that it was not Anonymous who first mentioned the 3,000-page report. That was Paul McGovern. As for the photos, everyone, of course, wanted to see the photos of Serpo. If we sent 12 people to a distant planet, where are the photos? Where are the videos? They were kept under tight control. Needless to say, if and when the photos get revealed or released, it breaks wide open. As for the photos, they may again be in a different location, maybe not even in the US. Suppose Anonymous is receiving his information from a retired person who was involved in Project Serpo, who is, for example, now living in Thailand, Australia, or South Africa. The point is that if this story is 90% true, or even 10% true, it's still the story of the millennium. Some people cannot believe that 12 American astronauts, they weren't actually astronauts, could have made a trip to another planet nearly 40 light years away in 1965. It's just too much of a leap to believe it. And many of the UFO people that I know still do not believe it. They just can't buy it. Okay, let's proceed here. It all started with Roswell. In my book, Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, I talked about the fact that we sent a team of, we sent a military task force to Antarctica in late 1946, headed up by Admiral Byrd. How many people have heard about Operation High Jump? We sent a team of 13 warships and a task force of 4,700 Marines to Antarctica to destroy the Nazi base, which we knew was there because the British had already found it. Everyone knew it was there. When Byrd's task force got to Antarctica, UFOs came out of the water and engaged the whole team, and they destroyed at least one ship. 68 Marines were killed. So Byrd had to turn around and go back, and he was furious. It was supposed to have been a 6-month operation, turned into a 2-month operation. And he spoke before Congress. He was questioned, and he told them that he thought that we should turn Antarctica into a thermonuclear test range because he knew that the Nazi base there was possibly, could possibly revive World War II and come and invade the United States. And if they had weapons like UFOs and saucers, it would be over before it began. So Congress didn't like the fact that Byrd was so outspoken. They told him they didn't want him giving any more interviews, and actually he ended up in a mental institution, and they kept him there. So Congress and various committees met and tried to decide what to do about the continuing Nazi presence. It was even a possibility that Hitler might still be alive, and actually he was. And the FBI knew it. He was in Argentina. So Hitler could be directing a return of the Third Reich. This time there would be the Fourth Reich, And there was a lot of panic in Congress. What are we going to do about this? So they thought about perhaps doing what Byrd had suggested, starting to use the nuclear option, and they thought it would blow a hole in the ion, the atmosphere. And as they were pondering this problem, an alien craft crashed into the desert outside of Roswell, New Mexico, and it became a whole new ballgame because we now had the possibility of developing the same technology with the aliens as friends. So there is no question that Roswell was indeed an alien craft. And we know that. Well, how do we know that? Because the CIA briefed President Reagan on the whole thing in 1981. Here's what they said. They said, Mr. President, the United States of America has been visited by extraterrestrial visitors since 1947. This is the CIA talking now, not even the DIA. We have proof of that. However, we have also taken some proof. We have some proof also that the Earth has been visited for many thousands of years by various races of extraterrestrial visitors. Mr. President, I'll just refer to those visits as ETs. In July 1947, a remarkable event occurred in New Mexico. During a storm, 2 ET spacecraft crashed. One crashed southwest of Corona, New Mexico, and one crashed near Datil, New Mexico. The U.S. Army eventually found both sites and recovered all of the debris and one live alien. I'll refer to this live alien as EBE. Here's the first crashed disk. This artwork by David Hardy is still incredible, and I use it all the time. It's really a great visual thing to look at. But here's a conception of the second disk, which crashed intact, but it wasn't found for 2 years. By that time, the 6 aliens on board had been completely, as you can see in this photo, completely decomposed, but it was exactly the same as the other craft, and the entities on board were the same. And here's what he says. The president says, "What does that mean? Do we have codes or a special terminology for this?" The caretaker says, "Mr. President, EBE means extraterrestrial biological entity. It was a code designated to this creature by the U.S. Army back in those days. This creature was not human, and we had to decide on a term for it. So scientists designated the creature EBE-1. We also referred to it as NOAA, N-O-A-H, for some reason. I have no idea why. There was a different terminology used by various aspects of the U.S. military." So Reagan says, "Do we or did we have others? The number 1 would seem to indicate we had others." The caretaker says, "Yes, we had others. Back then the term was EBE and no number designation. We'll explain how the others came into our knowledge." The president says, "Okay, sorry, I was just wondering, and I guess, well, I'm sure the briefing will cover this. Please continue." All the debris and the EBEs recovered from their first crash site were taken to Roswell Army Air Base, New Mexico. EBE was treated for some minor injuries and was then taken to Los Alamos National Laboratories, which was the safest and most secure location in the world. If he had been taken to the Pentagon, which is right in a busy intersection in Northern Virginia, it wouldn't have been very secure. Special accommodations were made for the alien. The debris was eventually transferred to Dayton, Ohio, home of the Air Force Foreign Technology Division. The second crash site wasn't discovered until 1949 by some ranchers. There were no live aliens at this site. All this debris went to Sandia Army Base in Albuquerque. The president says, "Okay, a question. Regarding the first site, how many aliens were in the spaceship?" The caretaker says, 5 dead aliens and 1 live and 1 alive. The bodies of the dead were transported to Wright Field in Ohio and kept in a form of deep freeze. They were later transported to Los Alamos, where special containers were made to keep the bodies from decaying. There were 4 dead aliens. I'm sorry, there were 4 in the second crash site, not 6. Those bodies were in an advanced state of decay. They had been in the desert for the 2 years. Animals and time got to these bodies. The remains were transported to Sandia Base and eventually on to Los Alamos. We determined that both crashed spaceships were of similar design and the bodies of the aliens were all identical. They looked exactly the same. They had the same height, weight, and physical features. Here are the photographs, Mr. President. And there's a pause while the president looks at the photographs. And the president says, can we classify them? I mean, can we contact them with anything, connect them with anything on Earth? And the caretaker says, no, Mr. President. They don't have any similar characteristics of a human with the exception of their eyes, ears, and a mouth. Their internal body organs are different, their skin is different, their eyes, ears, and even breathing is different. Their blood wasn't red, and their brain was entirely different from human. We could not classify any part of the aliens with humans. They had blood and skin, although considerably different than human skin. The president says, maybe I'm getting ahead, but do we know where they came from? Mars or our system or where? They said, no, they came from a planet 39 light years away. So that's the story of Roswell. That's the story of the briefing. Anyone who still doubts that Roswell took place or that there were alien craft, I think you should review this material.
I knew it. This is an alien, and you guys are from some government agency trying to keep it under wraps.
So there's the survivor. This artwork by Jim Nichols I still like to use, even though he's got the wrong configuration of the spaceship, because it shows the alien creeping away. And here's basically what they looked like. Now this particular sculpture was done by Cynthia Crawford. Anybody here know who Cynthia Crawford is? Cynthia lives in Phoenix. She gets psychic impressions of what all the aliens look like, and she gets them verified by another psychic, and she does sculptures of all of them. So in her booth, she's got little statues of all the aliens from all over the galaxy and beyond the galaxy. So if you ever get a chance to see her or talk to her or visit her booth, you're going to be amazed. Anyway, this is her rendition of the Ebens. And it does match up with what we just learned and what was reported by one of the witnesses, who I'll get into in a minute, named Frank Kaufman. Before we get to Kaufman, Kaufman is not very well known, but there were several TV shows about Roswell where they did talk to Kaufman. Some of the early shows. He was there. He was a staff sergeant, I believe, and he saw the bodies. And he was interviewed by, I think that he was interviewed by Stanton. I'm not sure. In any case, here is what Frank Kaufman said about what he saw. Want to play the video?
Time hiding it, they get curious.
Tell me about the aliens. Tell me about the bodies that were found. Were they good-looking people? Were they?
Oh yeah, they were. They didn't have any of these, slanted eyes or horny fingers, anything like that. They were. I don't know whether you want to call them people or so. I call them people because that's what I'm accustomed to looking at somebody as people. See, they were good-looking people. Fine skin. They were kind of ash-colored. That was the color of their skin. Eyes were just a little bit larger than ours, more pronounced. Small nose, a little small mouth, very small ears, see. No hair. Very fine features, very well built. Maybe 5'4", 5'5" in height. That's what I could remember seeing.
Frank, in your personal opinion, what happened here in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico? What is your bottom line?
That in 1947, I can only put it this way, that a craft of unknown origin crashed north of Roswell. It was recovered with bodies, not of this earth, which proved that we are not alone in this vast universe of ours.
Okay, that's Frank. I think he was one of the most credible witnesses for Roswell, and I think Don Schmidt missed out when he didn't report more about Kaufman. The alien was taken to Los Alamos and questioned there. We'll talk about that in a minute. But something else happened that was quite interesting. Some of the military people realized that that little craft that crashed at Roswell could not possibly have come from a distant star system. It was too small to make an interstellar journey. That there had to be other craft, perhaps in a mothership, circling the Earth. But we'll talk about that in a minute. In any case, they talked to this alien at length, and eventually the alien revealed that he had a communication device on the crashed craft that allowed him to communicate with his home planet. They were able to eventually talk to him because even though his language was very difficult to comprehend, and I'll talk about that in a minute, they taught him English, basically. And one of his military handlers became very adept at communicating with him and talked about the device that he had on board the craft. The alien remained alive at Los Alamos for 5 years. And towards the end of that period, which would have been the summer of 1952, one of the scientists at Los Alamos realized that if they could take this communication device back to the craft and power it up with the power unit on the craft, it might work. So they did that, and it worked. So it was interesting that the Earthling came up with this, not the alien. You know, it was an Earth scientist that realized that. In any case, from that point on, EBE-1 began communicating with his planet. And he sent 6 messages to his planet. By the way, speaking about his language, here's a report by an American language specialist who was brought in to try and bridge the gap between the two. He says, I'm a retired Army colonel. I was stationed at the Defense Language Institute in the early 50s. My specialty was languages. I spoke 5 different languages. I was sent on a temporary duty assignment to the Special Intelligence Center at Fort Belvoir, Maryland in 1964. When I arrived, I was given a dictaphone recording of a language. I listened to that language and realized it was something I had never heard before. It didn't sound like a language, but more like pitches and tones created by some device. I was later told this language was an alien language and that I, along with others, would have to somehow translate it. Our team of 18 language specialists worked on this for 6 months and couldn't crack it. I then learned of a special operation mission of 12 astronauts to an alien planet. The 12 had to learn this language. But it was almost impossible for us to teach a language like this. We never did learn a single word, and to the best of my knowledge, neither did the astronauts. And if all of you have seen the movie Close Encounters, you remember that in that movie, which was based on this event, they had to communicate with tones. Spielberg did a good job of putting that together and making that interesting. So Spielberg must have had this information. He probably did. Here's the alien alphabet. And as you can see, it's horrendous and overwhelming. But the alien at Los Alamos gave them this. They couldn't do anything with it. Here are the 6 messages that the alien sent before he died in 1952. The first message was just letting his planet know that he was alive. The second message explained the crash in 47 and the death of his crew. The third message asked for a rescue craft for him. The 5th message suggested an exchange program. Now here's the beginning of the exchange program, right here, being sent from EBE-1 to his planet, which we now know is named Serpo. We found that out later. The 6th message provided landing coordinates for any future rescue or visitation mission to Earth and confirmed a landing location. These locations were worthless because he didn't understand our planetary coordinates at that time, so that didn't do much good. But in any case, he tried. And then in the summer of '52, he died. Now, the scientists at Los Alamos realized that this little craft did not come 39 light years all by itself with 6 little guys on it. They thought there must be a mothership in orbit, and there must be other craft that can come down here. So they used the communication device to try and make that arrangement, and they did. They made an arrangement for the aliens to send another craft down to Earth. That craft came down in Kingman, Arizona in May of 1952. That craft did not crash, it landed. And it was meant to land at the Nevada test site, but they missed it. So it crashed in the Serpo Mountains north of Kingman. And the 4 aliens on board were perfectly okay. 2 of them were a little hurt, but 2 were fine. And we got there quickly. Now, how did we get there? We got there with a tank trailer in the middle of these mountains, which are pretty formidable. And the only way they could have done that is if they were in touch with Serpo. Serpo came back and contacted the aliens, and together they got the locations, the coordinates, and immediately we had a tank trailer there. The tank trailer took the thing on, put it on the tank trailer, and they took it up to the Nevada test site, where it was supposed to go in the first place. And the only reason we know about all of this is because a MUFON investigator by the name of Ray Fowler did a lot of heavy research about this. And he found a guy by the name of, he met a guy by the name of Stansel, and he called himself Werner at that time. He didn't give his real name. And Stansel said that he was taken to the crash site and asked to estimate the speed at which the craft landed, and it was only like 100 knots. So it was going very slowly. So it didn't crash, it really landed. And he was taken there in a blacked out bus from Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix, along with 14 other guys who were asked to look at this crash site and tell the Air Force more about it. And he said that as they escorted him to see the craft, he peeked into a tent that was nearby, and it was lit up. And in that tent, he saw a dead alien laying on a bed, and the alien was ash-colored, and he thought they had really scooped everybody because he peeked into that tent. Well, when he was done with his estimate of the landing, and all the other 14 people also, this Air Force colonel came on board the bus and asked them to raise their right hand and promised they would never tell anybody about this. This was very lightweight treatment because in most cases, people who have seen aliens or been in touch with them are given a death threat if they reveal anything. They were just told not to tell anybody. So, naturally, they all peeked into the tent. And they all saw the dead alien laying there. And the Air Force knew that, and the Air Force wanted them to report back that, hey, there was one dead alien on that craft, and that's the end of the game. No, there were 4, and they were all alive. So it was a neat piece of theater put on by the Air Force to convince these 15 guys that they'd just seen the one dead alien on board that craft, and he was dead. Meanwhile, the real 4 aliens were taken to Los Alamos on a bus. They were gone already. So we found that out later because this memo was sent in to the Serpo website talking about that whole incident and basically saying a bizarre situation was encountered at the retrieval site with the entities removed from the areas. Work proceeded to clean up and load the vessel on a tank trailer used to haul Sherman tanks. While these preparations were being made, an entry crew was formed. They were dressed in clean room clothing with medical surgical masks. The size of the crew was not mentioned in communications. What happened with the entry crew while inside of the vessel, so our people entered the vessel. After the 4 aliens were taken to Los Alamos, we put a team together to go into the craft and describe what was going on in there. They were dressed in clean room clothing with medical surgical masks. The size of the crew was not mentioned. What happened with the entry crew while inside of the vessel was noted as follows: communications failed. The crew, after 1 hour inside, emerged from the craft confused with upset stomachs. They removed their masks and threw up. What was astonishing, they could not remember any of the details inside the craft. It was sealed, camouflage loaded, and shipped to an undisclosed Nevada test facility. The entry crew was sent to Facility X to undergo medical examinations. Now, keep in mind that we had already set up a little habitat for the first alien who died in '52. So we already had that. And these were of the same race as the original alien. So they were sent to the same Los Alamos location. A medical facility was manned by doctors, bioastronautic physicists, chemists, and linguists were all there. At this time, communications was limited to basic sign language. So now, putting all this together, we now have a second craft from the same alien civilization sent down to help us, and from which we could reverse engineer our own. They were very helpful. They were very friendly, the aliens. And we started working on that immediately at the Nevada test site. The 4 live aliens were very incommunicative. They weren't very helpful, really, except one of them did strike up a friendship with one of the Air Force people, and that made the difference. Now, after this craft was taken to the Nevada test site, we brought in some engineers, some very experienced aeronautical engineers to work on it. And one of them was an ex-Marine pilot by the name of Bill Uhouse. Anybody here know about Bill Uhouse? Okay. Bill's job was to look at this alien craft at Area 51, which was now at S4. So Lazar was correct, it was at S4. Was to look at this and begin to build a simulator. We had to train pilots for this craft after we built it. And Uhouse's job was to build the simulator to train the pilots so they could fly this thing. And this all began in 1953. Remember, this craft came down at Kingman in May of 1953. Here's Bill Uhouse talking about what he did.
In those aircraft. While I was at Wright-Patterson, of course, I was approached by an individual that, and I'm not going to mention his name, to determine if I wanted to work in an area on just new creative things, okay? And apparently that was the flying disc simulator. What they had done, they had selected several of us, and they reassigned me to Link Aviation, which was a simulator manufacturer. At that time, they were building what they call the C-11B and F-102 simulator, B-47 simulator, and so forth. And they wanted us to get the experience before we actually started work on the flying disc simulator, which I spent 30-some years working on. The simulator wasn't actually functional until around 1958, where the simulator was actually operable. The craft that they used to build, which is a 30-meter one, was the one that crashed in Arizona, Kingman, Arizona. back in 53 or 52. I think it was 53. That's the one they used. That's the first one that they took out to the test site. It landed about 15 miles from, which used to be an Army air base, which is now defunct Army base. I can't recall the name of it. But that particular craft, there were some problems with, number one, getting it on the flatbed to take it up to Area 51. They couldn't get it across the dam because of the road. It had to be barged across the Colorado River at the time, and then taken up to where people go now, up 93, out to Area 51, which was just being really constructed at the time, and taken down those dirt roads and out to that particular area of the test site. There were 4 aliens aboard that thing, and those aliens went to Los Alamos, and they put certain people in there with them, people that were astrophysicists, just general scientists, to ask them questions. The way the story was told to me was there was only one of them that would talk to any of these scientists that they put in the lab with them. Only one of the aliens. The rest wouldn't talk to anybody or, even have a conversation with them. First they thought, it was all, ESP or, what do I want to say?
Telepathy?
Mental telepathy. But, most of that is kind of a joke to me because they actually speak, maybe not like we do, but they actually speak and can converse, The difference between this aircraft or this disc and other discs that they had looked at was that it was much simpler design. In the simulator, it was one big thing different. The thing that, like Lazar calls the reactor, okay, we didn't have a reactor. We had a space in a thing that looked like the reactor, but that wasn't the thing we operated the simulator with. We operated with 6 large capacitors that were charged with 1 million volts each. Say there were 6 million volts in those capacitors. They're largest capacitors ever built. These particular capacitors, they last for 30 minutes, so you could get in there and actually work the controls and do what you had to get the aircraft or get the simulator, the disc to operate, okay? Actually, when it was operable, it would lift off the ball about a certain amount of there was a dimension there that we had that it actually lifted up, and it could actually turn, a certain amount of degrees left to right or whatever. In a simulator now, you'll notice that there are no seat belts, right? And the same thing with the actual craft, no seat belts. You don't need seat belts because when you fly one of these things upside down, there's no upside down like in a regular aircraft. You just don't feel it. You have your own gravitational field right inside. So if you're flying upside down, to you, you're right side up. There weren't any windows. The only place we had any visibility at all, and it was done with cameras or video type things at that time, was in the turret section. It takes a lot of time because of the area and the smallness of it. Just to raise your hand, it becomes complicated. You have to be trained with your mind, to accept what you're going to actually feel. And
so there's some
experience.
Perceptual distortion.
There's a lot of distortion, yeah.
Yeah.
Seeing, just moving about, after a while, after you get used to it and all, and you do it, it's simple. You got to know where everything is, and you got to understand what's going to happen to your body. It's no different than, you know, accepting the G-forces, you know, when you're flying a aircraft or coming out of a dive, you know, and that kind of thing. It's
So that was Bill describing it, and that confirms the fact that they brought the Kingman craft to Area 51, and he worked on it with a team of other engineers and scientists. What he said was that every once in a while they'd run into a mathematical problem, they need some help. They said, bring in the alien. And so this was the alien that they brought in. You'll notice he does not look like anything we've seen about the Ebens. The Ebens were not cooperative mathematically, but we had others. We had other aliens working with us, and here's one of them. And Bill Uhouse drew this sketch of the alien and somehow got it out to the world. And this is what he looked like. And he would answer when they came some really heavy mathematical problems. He would help them. They did have problems in translation, but he was very helpful, and of course, he was a scientist. Kennedy then